want them. You know, they want to show, because never before has the public, I think, in this country been so universally against what this government's been doing for so long. You know, some might agree with me today that they've done something right. They've now actually decided to stop giving our money away to these useless causes in foreign countries nobody's heard of. You know, the Ulaanbaatar, you know, Tiddlywinks team or something, you know. And suddenly now we're spending on our own defence. Good. It's the first thing they've done right. But however, I do worry they haven't got the money. And when you see this morning in the papers that we've got, you know, the new net zero brigade still having a go, says frequent flyers face paying more under government climate plans. So you're going to be taxed more to fly now on your family holiday. They want you to take a carbon budget scenario going on, where basically tax rates are going to go up on things like gas boilers. They want you to get a heat pump. They don't want you to drive very far. They want you to eat less meat. I mean, who do these people think? I don't know who's on this climate change committee. Well, does anybody know?
Well, what's interesting about this is just before you send them to the gallows, Mike, they're just setting it out. This is the messenger. And this is how much was it? £300 Ed Miliband promised to cut from our energy bills. This is really interesting. This is on page 2 of The Sun. Jack Elsom and Harry have done the story. So it says, the report says, and I'm quoting here, depending on the level of policy support, a typical household will experience somewhere between £100 in savings to £150 in additional costs per year on average. So actually your bills, and this is between 2025 and 2050.
Right.
So between now and 2050, actually, there's a distinct possibility, this committee is saying, that actually your bills are going to go up by £150 a year. You're not going to save.
And they're going up again by £111 on the 1st of April, because the energy price cap was raised yesterday. We said it was going to be 75 quid. It's actually more than that. It's £111.
Yes, but this is by 2050. So even in 25 years' time, on average, households are not even going to come anywhere close to saving what Ed Miliband and Keir Starmer promised before the general election. It's going to cost a huge amount of money, and people don't have a huge amount of money. You know, people don't just have that money lying down the back of the sofa. These are tough times.
And also, people don't want heat pumps because they're being installed against their will in some houses, like social housing-wise, and they don't work. They don't keep the house warm.
They break down.
Yeah, they make a lot of noise as well. Is the other thing we hear. It sounds like you've got a van with its engine running when you've got the machine sitting outside. But I've got even better news for you. I've decided to look this up, and I've found who are the members of the Climate Change Committee.
Go on.
And it's a right motley-looking collection, right? Professor Piers Foster. Piers Foster is the director of the Priestley Centre for Climate Futures and Professor of Physical Climate Change at the University of Leeds, so he's a dud. Professor Keith Bell, co-director of the UK Energy Research Centre, who's a fellow of the Royal Society of Edinburgh. Basically, we've got Dr Stephen Fries, a senior associate fellow at the Institute for New Economic Thinking, University of Oxford. Professor Caroline Lequere, FRS. She apparently is a professor of climate change science at the University of East Anglia. They're the ones that cooked up the old hockey stick graft, remember? So they're all liars. Nigel Topping, appointed by the UK Prime Minister's UN climate change high-level champion for COP26. They've all got very strange teeth. Swenja Sominski, chair of the Munich Climate Insurance Initiative. Who are these people? Baroness Brown of Cambridge, an engineer. Dr Ben Caldicott, Professor Richard Dawson, Professor of Earth Systems Engineering. Professor Chris Evans, not that one, biogeochemist studying the impacts of land use and other environmental drivers. It goes on and on. Dr Maria Romanello, Professor Natalie Seddon, Professor Swenja's there again, expert advisors. I mean, what's going on? Who are these people, and are we paying them?
Yes, well, Labour are insisting, this is a Labour insisting that they're just it's not a statutory body, it's just advice, it just provides advice which isn't binding. But I think what's interesting about this is, if I'm just one of your listeners now, and I've got, let's just say you've got the Times in white on your left hand, your Telegraph on your right hand. So this is saying that actually, we're only going to hit, the Telegraph is saying we're only going to hit net zero goals by deterring air travel through measures such as a frequent flyer levy. And then I read the Times, I pick up the Times, we've got the Transport Secretary saying there's a new runway for Gatwick near takeoff. Which one is it?
It can't be both, can it? This is
am I taking the right? Am I going to Gatwick in the left hand, or am I taking the right hand? And I'm just going to have to pay more tax because the government doesn't want me to fly.
And Rachel Reeves is also pushing the idea of a third runway at Heathrow in the meantime, isn't she? Saying growth is the most important thing. I mean, is that all going to go by the wayside now because of the defence budget?
Well, they hope to get private investment, but he'll get tangled.
I was talking to a guy, actually, funnily enough, last week, who was involved in the private investment side of those kinds of projects, and he said that it's definitely going to go ahead because there's an awful lot of money in it, and that's what always leads these things. Because what I didn't know, which he told me, is that Heathrow is by far and away the biggest airport in the world for spending in terms of what people spend when they get to the airport. Because I said to him, it's going to be chaos, isn't it? You're going to have people queuing up to try and get through that horrible little tunnel into Heathrow. If you're going to build more terminals, you're going to have to revamp all the roads. He said, listen, don't worry about that, because what we want is to get them in quick so that they can spend more money while they're milling around in the air. We don't mind how long they wait at the airport. We just want them spending money. So that will happen, but he says it's at least 15 years away before any of that happens.
And the original plan, I think, is it's going to be chaos on the M25 because they're going to build a bridge. One of the runways is actually going to be a bridge like at Charles de Gaulle over the M25.
Right.
I mean, it's a huge project, but it will generate.
It will generate a lot of money for the people building it. That's for sure. Whether it generates money for the economy in the short term is anybody's guess. But you're right. I mean, there is this kind of weird kind of schizophrenia about this government, where on the one hand they're saying, let's not fly too much, and on the other hand, let's expand the airport.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know which one. I don't know which one it is, and this hasn't really been. The Conservatives are really good when the Conservatives have a row. The Tories in government were always really good at having a label, so they had a name for each group that was whether it was the ERG or the Five Families or whatever. But Labour, there's this tension, this huge tension between the environmentalists, the eco warriors on the one hand, and then those who realise that actually, in order to get people feeling better off and voting Labour again, they need to secure economic growth on the other.
They need to make them feel a bit better off.
And they need to make they need to feel, and they need to do that by creating really good high-skilled jobs, like building runways at Heathrow Airport, and that's how you get people.
Well,
and the jobs
they're realising, I suppose, if there are any grown-ups in the Labour Party, they're realising that student politics doesn't really cut it, and it's all very well waving your green peace flag around and saying, "Oh, let's all have a heat pump and let's all sing Kumbaya," but that's not going to help you get re-elected, matey.
No, it's not.
Should we remind ourselves of what Ed Miliband actually said before the election? I think this was.
We set that out for 2030. It was an independent set of modelling that said that bills could go down by up to £300. And what's important, Susanna, is that the report I referred to last week from the energy system operator confirms that not only is our target achievable, but it will lead to lower costs of electricity.
So in 6 years' time, our bills will go down by £300. How much are they going to have gone up by that point?
What an absolute plank. I mean, this is the trouble with Miliband. He doesn't. I mean, he's very much in the nutty camp, isn't he? On the green zealotry front.
Yeah, if you're I was at this Labour thing a few weeks ago, and there was this green. I mean, she was obviously previously a Green voter. She was saying, they're abandoning, they're going to build this runway, and somebody who really knew Labour turned around and said, "Don't worry. You've got Ed Miliband in the net zero department. You've got your person. It doesn't get any better than this for you because Ed Miliband's there in net zero. He's leading the green agenda." And I always contrast Ed Miliband to that point when he was Labour leader and he was eating the bacon sandwich in that flower market, and he just looked terrible. And when you watch him now talking about the green stuff, he's living his best life. Yeah, he is so happy just talking about net zero this and.
But the trouble is,
carbon
nothing he says makes any sense.
For your listeners, it's just head in hands. Time. It's just
nothing he says makes any sense, and none of it's true. Apart from that, he's doing a great job. How about this from Andrew? He says, "Morning, Mike. As regards heat pumps, I have one fitted. Why does my energy company charge more on their heat pump tariff? I can save the planet, but it is going to cost even more money." And Mike says this: "We should be exploiting and exporting our huge natural gas resources to help pay for the increase in defence spending. It's a no-brainer and would have the added benefit of bringing down energy prices. No doubt, two-tier and thieves corporation will use this as an excuse to raise taxes instead." That's Mike in Colchester, and that is the trouble. They will, because they'll say with their very solemn faces on, this is a matter of national security, and therefore we have to ask you all to dig very deep to save the planet and to save the world and to save Britain and to save Europe and to save Ukraine, and they'll all be going Slava Ukraine every 5 minutes, like there's some kind of resistance movement against the Russians, and people will be sick to death of it because yes, we need more and better defences, but no, we can't pay any more in tax, thanks. You can show that you can get rid of some of the wasteful expenditure that you've been doing for the last 6 months, so do more of it.
Yes, and it would be, you know, for Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves to come back with that and turn that mini budget, spending review, I should say, that's coming out in the spring into a mini budget where they end up raising taxes, would just go down so badly. They realised the backlash after the October budget, that they realised that had to be a one-off, that they cannot come back and ask for more money and more money. And we've seen, and it's not just about necessarily how your listeners feel or whatever, but it's also what's happening with businesses.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a story on page 17 of the Telegraph, which is...
This is about retail jobs, isn't it?
You know, there's more than 100,000 jobs in retail.
170,000, I think, 160,000.
160,000 jobs in retail are now vulnerable, part-time jobs. Those are working people, on low salaries, you know, who are struggling to make ends meet, who by no definition would ever be able to write a cheque to get themselves out of trouble if they got into trouble, as was the proviso put by Keir Starmer before the election, who are now, their jobs are vulnerable because businesses are saying, hang on, I've now got to pay the increase in national insurance contributions.
Minimum wage is up.
The threshold is up. I can't afford to take on that part-time worker. I can't afford to take that risk. I need to pull our business horns in. You know that shift where you have, you go to the tills and it's an automated till, and sometimes you have 2 or 3 people helping you. Well, why not just make it one person helping you? And the customers could just wait a bit longer for somebody to come round and put in the code so you can buy that bottle of wine, whatever it is. Those are the sorts of jobs we're talking about. And those are the sorts of decisions that businesses are going to be making because it's just that much more expensive.
Exactly.
It eats into their profit.
Absolutely right. We've got another little clip for you from Ed Miliband. This is what he had to say on homes.
This is such an exciting development because it's saying to people who are buying a home that it will be guaranteed that you will have 0 bills for at least 5 years, and that's a combination of heat pump technology, solar panels, battery technology. And it's so exciting because with Great British Energy, our new publicly owned energy company, if Labour comes into office, we'll be seeing more of these homes coming into being. And what also it's all about is tackling the cost of living crisis, and that's what Great British Energy, with our biggest investment in homegrown clean energy in our history, is all about doing.
What's he talking about? I mean, he's literally living on another planet, isn't he? He's got this weird... He's talking about our mate Jürgen at GB Energy, the man who is the only employee of GB Energy, who doesn't have an office, who doesn't have a car that is provided to him, doesn't have any energy, actually, doesn't buy any energy, doesn't sell any energy, doesn't make any energy, doesn't produce anything, doesn't even have, I don't think, a website.
No.
But apparently you're going to be able to have a house that doesn't have any bills.
Yeah.
It's like Cloud Cuckoo Land. You might as well have Charlie in the Chocolate Factory running the country.
Really, really testy if you dare to ask him when they're going to be those new jobs that have been promised.
Yeah, when can I move into the house with no bills? When's that going to happen?
Don't ask me that.
Don't ask me that. That's obviously in the future sometime. I mean, unbelievable, isn't it?